Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome to the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can join me over the next hour by simply dialing 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And, of course, we are live streaming on the TuneIn app, as the station does, 24/7, folks. If you don't have that on your device, your phone or whatever, seconds to download it, punch in WCRN. Do me a favor, hit that like button so we know you're there, and then we're very easy to find. We're also streaming on my social media platforms, so you can watch the show and listen to the show on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, even Twitch TV at Joe M Show. Everything else is Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I. That is our social media handle, as they say. Ted A is flying the board. Ted E is chilling in the studio with me. And it's been quite a week, quite a few days. There's plenty to talk about. Obviously, today's show has kind of written itself. Look, within a matter of days, we've had SCOTUS rulings on the Second Amendment, school choice, and Roe versus Wade. These are huge, huge decisions, and two of them just in the last 2 days. So obviously, that's going to be the topic of today's show. We're going to talk about this. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Center, that was released today. I mean, think about it, prepped for the show and totally wipes out what I had prepped with this court decision coming down and the timing. And I'm kind of, I thought they might have held it off even further, but then releasing it on a Friday makes a little sense. Giving people the weekend to digest it and get out. But we have a lot of issues with that, and we'll get into that. But actually, before I jump into that, I do want to address the Second Amendment issue, and that came actually yesterday afternoon. After I got off doing Political Thursday, this came down, and that was New York State Rifle and Pistol Association et al. Versus Brune in the state of New York. And the thing about this decision, and look, we had Heller, remember, a few years ago, also out of New York. And this decision is I find, very common sense and constitutional. And on all of these cases, I've always tried to point out to people that if you're going to push something all the way to the Supreme Court, you have to come to peace with that you may have to live with the reality of it not going the way you want it to go. So be careful what you wish for, is the old saying, isn't it? I mean, look at the abortion issue one. That all started because they wanted to eliminate the 24-hour waiting period. That gave legs to the Roe versus Wade decision to get it to the Supreme Court. If you have never changed that 24-hour waiting period, they wouldn't have been able to pick up the case. So you always have to remember these things. Now, the Second Amendment ruling, the gun bill that they ruled on, basically is because in the state of New York, but actually specifically, we have all known it was next to impossible. Without an edict from God himself, you were probably not going to get a license to carry concealed permit within New York. You would have to have real good reasons, probably a lot of political connections, and the ability to wait it out and fight it. And people have been doing that. And of course, lately, I mean, everything got slowed down because of the pandemic and shut down. So nobody was getting anything the last couple of years. But this started before that. And what New York was doing, or Manhattan specifically, would say, all right, you want a permit to carry concealed weapon. Okay, it's right, we get it. Now you have to take step. Step 2 is you have to prove to us, state, establish that you need this, that you have an imminent threat or a reason for us to allow you to exercise your constitutional right. And the court said, no, there is no second step. The fact that it is a constitutional right is enough. You don't have to go above and beyond. You don't have to have another field or hurdle to get over. And Manhattan's answer or response to this is, well, we're densely populated and we've got all of this. Yes, that actually, in my opinion, argues to the case. You're very densely populated and you have high crime. And especially now, in the same breath that you're saying you can't have your constitutional right to carry, we're also going to defund the police, cut the number of officers in the area, tie their hands in all kinds of policies and procedures, and the response time isn't going to be there. Remember they used to say that you call 911, you don't need a gun, call 911. And they used to say, well, why do you have a fire extinguisher? Just call the fire department. No matter how fast the police are, most gun exchanges happen in a matter of seconds, not minutes or hours. So this is saying, look, your gun problems in New York, as Detroit, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, etc., these aren't crimes and shots being fired. Typically, or ever, I mean, less than 1% of these shootings that happen are done by a legal gun and a person had the right to have the gun. So your problem in Manhattan, folks, are the people who are illegally carrying firearms and couldn't get a permit probably if they tried because of criminal records. And the gun wasn't bought in a dealer's store. There's no blue card on this. It's not registered. You should be more concerned with that than the law-abiding citizen who's carrying a gun. So you're saying you don't want these people to be able to defend themselves and protect themselves. Now, the media does quite a good job of lying by omission, and they don't cover the stories of people who have defended themselves or others. You'd have to be an NRA member and get the magazine or dig in the internet to go find a site where you can find these stories and these stats. The FBI keeps them. And there are thousands upon thousands of incidences every year that lives have been saved because of an armed person. Legally armed person carrying a gun for self-protection, protection of others. And they were fortunately in the right place at the right time. I guess you could debate that. They probably wouldn't want to be there at all unless they saved somebody's life. Maybe they would. So they said, okay, you want the permit? Prove to us why you need it. Well, that's not part of the Constitution. It's not the second step in this process, folks. And Justice Thomas wrote, the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right, subject to an entirely different body of rules than the other Bill of Rights guarantees. And he goes on to quote McDonald 561 U.S. 780. That's the plurality opinion. Now, the exercise of other constitutional rights does not require individuals to demonstrate to government officers some special need. The Second Amendment right to carry arms in public for self-defense is no different. New York's proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment by preventing law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms in public. See what he's saying here? You can't just put a second hurdle on these people. That's not part of it. In the Second Amendment, and this always bothered me. I never understood why the Second Amendment is always the one that people think they can challenge and it shouldn't be there. But do we do that to the First Amendment or the 14th? We don't do this with any other amendment. New York, he goes on, New York and other may issue, state requires persons who want to carry a weapon to demonstrate a need, which the state agrees. And Thomas noting that Heller had already decided this issue. If you remember the Heller case, that was actually the New York case too. It's coming up during the Clinton election. And it even came up in one of the debates.
2 minutes.
So it blew that up for good, saying that two-step balancing test required by the state was just one step too many. Indeed, the one test he endorsed was the historical traditions of the American people, which demands our unqualified deference. When was the last time you heard someone in the federal government say that, folks? So the Second Amendment, some are saying, oh, it was a victory. And I'm not so much saying it's a victory as just simply the court said, hey, remember the Constitution? That's still a thing here, and we're going to follow it. That's pretty much what they said with this. And nobody in states, because it used to be left up to the local chief could decide. And then that got corrected. And no, it's not really up to you, the chief. Someone applies, fills out the application correctly. They don't have a restraining order. They don't have a felony. There's no reason not to give it to them. They get it. I heard the Worcester chief of police talk about this once because he said the image, the perception in Worcester is, oh, nobody can get a permit in Worcester. And even the chief said, I can't say no if there's no reason. It's your Second Amendment. You make an application, you get the permit as long as everything checks out and balances in the back. All right, we're going to continue this, and I'm going to really want to hear what you have to say on the RV Wade overturn. You can imagine the text thread among my sisters I've been reading all morning on this particular issue. So join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000 to join the conversation here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with us, folks, and we'll be back on the other side.
Hey, everybody, right from It's the Liquor Talk, letting you know that you can hear us Saturday morning at 11, but also at our new time, weeknights, right after Howie Carr p.m. It doesn't stop there. Randall and I are going to stick around and host North Star music after the show. So join us for New Orleans Spirit, glass of your favorite adult beverage. Enjoy Randall and I as we live your favorite music on the North Star.
Shining Rock Golf Club of Northbridge is a shining example of excellence in golf. The golf club's highest priority is your golf experience, and their award-winning 18-hole luxury and challenging golf course will deliver. And for shining moments and memorable events, the Shining Rock Golf Club of Northbridge delivers again. Plan your next tournament, fundraiser, or corporate event at Shining Rock Golf Club. Events and budgets of all sizes are welcome. Shining Rock Golf Club, Pro Shop, Driving Range, and Bar and Grill are fully open for the season. For the very best in golf, with friendly, experienced service, visit Shining Rock Golf Club of Northbridge, a shining example of excellence in golf. Call 508-234-0400. That's 508-234-0400. On the web at shiningrock.com. Shining Rock Golf Club of Northbridge.
30 seconds.
Looking to up your bourbon game? Larceny Wheated Bourbon is the key. It's an award-winning small batch bourbon made with more wheat for a smoother taste. Get caught in the act. Larceny Wheated Bourbon, Bardstown, Kentucky. 46% alcohol by volume. Think wisely, drink wisely.
At Evan Williams, when we make bourbon, we keep it simple. We do things right. And when you taste it, you'll understand why. Evan Williams, bourbon done right. Evan Williams Bourbon, Bardstown, Kentucky, 43% alcohol by volume. Evan Williams Bourbon reminds you to think wisely, drink wisely.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to
All right, folks, welcome back to the second segment here on the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. That's right. Weekends right here, folks. I'll be back Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Mike Wade at 7 and Peter Blute back behind the microphone at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. Your Sunday morning talk block is intact. So join us. Wake up with us on Sunday morning. Reminding you, you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000, and our text is 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. If you don't have your phone, but you have a device, you can email text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in real time. I'm actually going to respond to some texts that we've got over the last week or so a little later, but we're going to move on because these are important decisions. You are witnessing history right now. This is literally historic. I mean, this is 49 years since the R.V. Wade decision. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg has said and warned us that the original R. Wade was not based on solid constitutional ground and it could be chipped away. And she warned of this coming. 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones. Mark is waiting patiently. Good morning, Mark, or rather afternoon, Mark. What say you?
Yeah, not much on this. What I want to focus on is the Speaker of the House. She made a statement at the podium, televised on all the main media outlets. She made a statement that to me was very discerning as an American citizen. She referred to the Supreme Court as an extremist, in quotation, extremist Supreme Court. Now, coming from me or you, don't mean too much. But when a Speaker of the House, the third in line to the President of the United States, she's only 2 steps removed from the presidency of the United States, makes a statement like that. We're going into dangerous waters. This country, our government, federal government, on a federal level, becoming dangerously unstable. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The court, she doesn't agree with the court. She labels them extremists. And what's the next word after that, Mark? Extremist leads very easy to terrorists. And she's using dangerous language here. It's ridiculous that a sitting speaker would even use any kind of terminology that way in reference to the Supreme Court, another co-equal branch of government. And this is right now, I mean, she's already leveraging this. She was saying that you have to go to the polls, right? This is what they're going to use this decision as part of their quiver to ramp up the base. But the left only seems to know how to use fear to rally the troops. They don't really rally the troops with positive debate and discourse. It's always fear. We gotta scare you. This is going to happen. This is horrible, and you've got to go to the polls and wipe out all of those extremists, also known as conservatives or Republicans, because they've done a job of trying to transfer the Republican Party to the Trump Party, right? So they're trying to put the whole bloc on the right as if they're all Trumpsters, and they've already established Trump is as bad as Hitler, and if you're as bad as Hitler, anything's okay. Any means to attack you. Mark, are you still there? Did we lose him? All right, Mark, thank you for the call. I didn't know if you hung up or not. All right, folks. So the Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Center. This is the case that made its way up through the court system, got to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, this decision today, they made the decision, they released it today, and it overturns the landmark abortion case of Roe v. Wade. Now, what you have to understand is it doesn't outlaw abortion. and we've got to be clear on this, folks. It says it's going back to the states. And the Constitution says that anything not specifically addressed in the Constitution is left up to the states. We've come to think of our way, our political system government is governing over the states, whereas the origin of it is it was the states certain tasks and needs, but the states govern themselves. And that's why part of this argument for the last 49 years has been that the original decision of R.V. Wade was not really founded in constitutional or constitutionalism. It was something that should have been left to the states. It's not, abortion isn't a constitutional right. Now, I know the argument is there's a lot of things not mentioned in the Constitution. Interracial marriage, gay marriage, right? They're not in the Constitution. But that's why it's up to the Supreme Court to take the Constitution, interpret it, and apply it to the modern day world. But abortion is not in the Constitution. Heck, women are barely recognized in the Constitution, much less abortions and pregnancies and everything that goes with it. So they're simply saying, look, we're putting this back to the state. And whatever your state is, that's what it is. And there's like 17 states who have trigger legislation already sitting there in anticipation of this might happening. So they already have abortion laws that are either immediately kick in or might kick in on July 1 or the end of the month. It doesn't, you got to go state by state. So again, this argument, this court case, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Center, was because they had a 24-hour waiting period. So deciding to go after that 24-hour waiting period because you didn't like it or you think it was wrong gave legs to this argument to get to the Supreme Court in a reason for which they'll be standing. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let me jump to Joe and Millis, waiting patiently on the phone. Good afternoon, Joe. What say you?
Good morning, Joe. Afternoon, Joe. Thank you for taking my call. I thought it illustrates the Supreme Court. It illustrates and reinforces the notion that there's not a mob rule in our country. They went strictly by the Constitution, and that's reassuring to me anyways, knowing that the Supreme Court is going to overlook any type of threats or, backlash that might happen with them. Yep. They're going to go strictly by the Constitution. So I think it's reassuring to a lot of Americans.
Yeah, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it seems as though the more leftist judges are activist judges, and they want to use and manipulate their decision to fit activism to the justices that say, well, let me dust off the Constitution, pull that out. It's the blueprint for the country. That the major three decisions that have recently happened are huge. Now, this includes the main case for school choice.
Yeah.
That they said, look, your right to religion, to act and be free from interference existed long before this government did. You were born with that right. So if you want to raise your children and send them to a faith-based school, you can do that with the voucher program and school choice. Now, of course, everybody's saying, well, wait a minute, tax dollars should never be going to churches. Now, just a quick history lesson, and I'm sure you know this, Joe, there for people, is the Revolutionary War, it wasn't just about tea, and it wasn't just about windows. Yeah, they used to, the king would tax your windows, by the way. Back in the day, if you were building a house, you had to decide, do we need that window? Because I'm going to pay a tax on the window for the rest of my life. But they had the Church of England, right? The king separated from the Vatican because He didn't think anybody should be equal, much less above him.
The king. Right.
King began the Church of England. Well, you were taxed for the church. So that meant the state, being the throne, was taking your money to fund the church. And you had no say about that. And that was a big part. It's not talked about a lot, but that was a big part. The T was it. So we have that decision. Then we have the segment, which I agree 100%. There's no second hurdle there. And now we have the reverse of Roe versus Wade. It's not the reverse. It's not. Abortion's not illegal. It's good from state to state, Joe. It's right. It doesn't make it illegal. People need to chill for a second.
It's not a constitutional right. And that was the thing that Romney, although I disagreed with many of his things, he's when he ran for president, that's one of the things he screamed over was going back to states' rights.
Yes. And I think we should be going back to state rights on a lot of levels. And this includes this asinine debate about federalizing elections. No, it's very clear. Elections are up to the states.
Their battle cry, Joe, is we're going to lose democracy. Well, I'm in a state where there's one party rule. There's a lot of the electors run unopposed. The legislature has the numbers to override the vetoes. So you want to talk to me about losing democracy?
Yes.
As my legislatures give rights to immigrants and take mine away. Let's start a conversation about the loss of democracy. And they gerrymander the districts to ensure that I'll never get representation. Yeah, let's talk about the loss of democracy.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, you're 100% right. We are late, right? With one party rule, and democracy is out of the picture, Joe. But I want to. There you go. All right. Joe, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. All right, folks. We're going to take a break at the halfway point through here on the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000 join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Don't forget, you're live streaming on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi. That's Mangi. Joe Mangi Show. Stick with us. We'll be back for the second half right after this.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Center. Call Jerry today at 877-772-17 retirement.
I'm meteorologist Sherry, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on radio 830 WCRN. We've got highs in the 70s and lower 80s today. We're going to keep cloudy with a lot of on and off clouds. Now, most of your afternoon is going to be dry, but a spot shower or two could pass through. More than half of us likely stay dry, but I do want you to be on the lookout for that rogue shower. Any kind of isolated shower is going to diminish with the setting sun this evening. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearman. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Fluorescent lamps. Thermometers. Thermostats. These could all contain mercury. So let's dispose of them properly. Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Know your products with mercury. So you can dispose of health and the environment. To learn what products in your home may contain mercury and what is clean, contact your local Board of Health or Department of Public Works or visit keepmercuryrising.org. Know your products with mercury so you can dispose of them properly.
Together, we can keep our environment performance for the planet.
If you see something,
do something.
Be the difference.
Focus on your health with the Frankie Boyer Show weekdays at 2 on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Joe mentioned something about gerrymandering, and that's very true. And I just, before I forget this and we get to the end of the show, in response to these texts that come in, and there's a couple of you, you write books to me on that. And let me just say, if you get to that point, dial 508-871-7000, have a conversation. I don't shut you down if I don't like what you're saying, and I think you know that. But one of the texters for gerrymandering, if it helps Republicans, wrong again, as the texter happens to be wrong. And you know who you are. I've always said and maintained that gerrymandering is not a good thing. Once we do the census every 10 years and we change our districts based on the population, we all know this, the Electoral College, the votes, and how many seats the state has, et cetera. Well, we're at a point here that I think it's that the districts should be drawn by computers. It's a very simple algorithm that can be done. A first-year computer science kid could do this. Take the population, you punch the data in, take it from the census, the decisions, not putting any like in gender, marital status, right, or political affiliation. None of those things should be considered or have anything to do with determining a congressional district. So take the human element out of it and let the computers draw it and let it fall where it may. Gerrymandering is actually named after a Massachusetts politician for creating these weird districts. The Worcester district has had up to weird shapes going from the New Hampshire border at times down to Fall River. Now you think Massachusetts, it's a long state. You just draw a line down, cutting the population into the appropriate numbers. So to the texture, you're wrong again. I'm an advocate element out of the figuring out of districts. Let a computer do it with none of that data, because it's supposed to be based on population so that everybody is represented, or every congressperson represents the same number of people throughout the country. That's what that's supposed to be, folks. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. We're talking about the recent court decisions that have come down. Let me go to Ken, who's been waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what say you?
Good morning, Joe. Another slow news day, huh?
It is. I'm telling you, it's hard for me to really plan a show and come here and talk about, Ken. It's a tough job.
But, I don't like past yesterday's big news just to get to today's big news, because we're going to be talking about today's big news for many weeks and months, if not. And, of course, yesterday's big news was the vote on the gun bill.
Yeah, which is why I started with that. I think it's huge, and it solidifies the Second Amendment again, and I agree with you. I don't want that to get glossed over, and I don't want the main decision on school choice to get glossed over either.
Joe, I think you're speaking to the court decision, which was in our favor. I'm speaking to the Senate vote, which was not in our favor.
Oh, you're talking about
McConnell stabbed us in the back. I'm sorry. When I get stabbed in the back, I don't just that, even though there's bigger news that comes along, or at least seems to be.
All right, we're shifting gears. You're talking about the licenses?
I'm speaking to the gun bill last night that passed 65 to 33.
Oh, the bill itself. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Yeah. What is wrong with the Republicans that supported that? See, I
got the simple explanation, Joe.
Yeah.
See, they know, Mitch McConnell knows there's a whirlwind of news. And when he stabs us in the back is when he thinks he can get away with it. With the, so much is going on. You didn't realize that in the back, did you? But that's what he did.
Yeah. It's a politician's move.
Right. But the whole point is this was a proxy vote for the majority leader vote that will be coming in January 2023, which all of us expect by then the Senate will be Republican. Mitch McConnell said back, I think in January or February, oh, I will be the next majority leader, period. Mitch, do we have any say on that? Yeah, Mitch, we do. We, the voters, have fed up with you. And we hope to get candidates voted in this fall and get enough of them such that you're out of the door when it comes to leading the party, because I will never join the party while your leadership. And I think the voters who are truly conservative, which he hates, he's not conservative, he hates us. He's embarrassed, literally. The things that we believe in, he doesn't, because he's in the swamp crowd. And he's there so long, he'd rather be approved by the swamp, which are leftists. That's the reality.
And Ken, like so many politicians, and I hate to have to bring this up, folks, but you have to also look at spouses sometimes and family members, because when you realize that maybe a politician's spouse has a good job in federal government and is, that has to do with Democratic support and vice versa. Things, pillow talk, husband and wives. And I've said this before, I've tried to talk about this, folks. And every once in a newspaper or a magazine will put out kind of a flow chart or something that shows all of the incestuous relationships, that this person is an anchor at this major news outlet, and the spouse has a very high level position in the federal government or on the president's administration somewhere. And, it's all incestuous. So these people, as you used, and the word we use is swamp to describe that melding pot within the Beltway in DC, that once they get there, it's sucked to that swamp. And then when family members start getting jobs and positions, it starts to get, is there a line between the Republican and the Democrat up there? Can you even tell the difference to some of these people? I say often you can't.
Are you speaking of Elaine who's making millions, not just a few million, but like hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion or more, from shipping from China, who just happened to give a $25 million gift, I believe it was last year, to his son-in-law, who is Mitch. Gee, you think there's a little bit of corruption going on here? And that's why his focus isn't on us, the voters, but on lining his own pockets and keeping his power of corruption.
Well, you know what?
As long as possible.
See, that's why that old saying, right? Politicians and diapers should be changed often for the same reason. And I know everybody likes their guy or their woman there, but you got to shake it up, and we've got to change and flip these seats, and not just from the one party to the other, but the people, which is why term limits I am not opposed to. I used to be. I used to say, you have term limits, you vote them up, but that's not really term limits, because, Ken, the system has gotten so advantageous for the incumbent. The power that the office holds, the ability to raise money when you have power and you're sitting in that seat, really does make it uneven, and it's not a level playing field for any challenges. So maybe it's time that we actually did like we did. There was no term limits for the presidency at one point, right? But we said, hey, this guy could run for a third term, and we're dangerously moving towards a monarch opposed to a president. So let's put a term limit in. Well, some women and that's it.
Speaker of the House, Minority Leader, not Senate President, Senate Majority Leader, or Senate Minority Leader can only serve no more than 6 years, period. A lot of this corruption will go bye-bye.
Yeah, that's another good point. Leadership roles. I mean, we've got people who have 20 and 30 years in some, positions, chairmanships and speakers, and not 30 years and 20 years in speaker, but Pelosi's got to be running pretty good because she was lost it and then she came back
she's
in.
over 10.
So when you add up all of the time, she really shouldn't have been installed the second time.
Yeah, and guess who's been about 20 years either as majority leader or minority leader? Yep, the same guy, Mitch McConnell.
Yeah,
and that's
it's
where
time.
we get stabbed in the back.
Which is why I hope, and by the way, the concept of this red wave is I think, and I know where you stand on that, you made it clear, but I think that number is going to get knocked down because the left is going to use this decision and some other things that, the January 6th hearings, they're hyping that. They're going to hype this. Plus, he's already called to the polls to vote accordingly on this as a one-issue thing. So I think there's going to be some of the seats that we would win because of this decision in the January 6th hearings. I still think the Republicans will take the House and probably the Senate,
Joe.
But not 70 seats.
I agree.
I know you do.
Accelerates the momentum. So we agree on most things, but I'm very optimistic as to the impact it truly is.
I'm also the type of person, Ken, I don't like to jinx it. I don't even like to use the word red wave or tidal wave or tsunami or anything because I don't want to jinx it. I honestly, I absolutely believe, common sense dictates everything's in the favor of the Republicans taking the House because it's midterms and that always happens.
1 minute.
But the entire populace of the United States is sick and tired of the crime wave that basically is ignored by legacy media and the just random violence that takes place out there. He's prosecuting and doing their job. Heck, the lack of the attorney general, Ken, not to Rob. We've got these people who are violating the law, openly violating 1507 and picketing and marching in front of justices' houses.
30
and
seconds.
Nothing was done to them, Ken.
Many winning issues. I can't see how it's not a tsunami.
All right. Well, we'll see. It's going to come very quickly. Thank you for the call, Ken. Always greatly appreciated. All right, folks, we're going to have to take a break and come back for our fourth and final segment here on the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, we're live streaming on the TuneIn app, and you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. Stick with us. We'll be back on the other side, folks.
It's summertime, and they're calling you. Hi, I'm Paul Koalis, president of Worcester. Your perfect escape to summer fun awaits you here, where we offer the area's largest selection of late model, certified pre-owned vehicles, most still under factory warranty.
Like a 2021 Chevy Silverado 1500 work truck with just 23,000 miles for only $32,995.
For hot deals on the hottest vehicles, visit Linder's on Granite Street in Worcester.
Linder's, the intelligent alternative.
93% of adults listen to the radio each week. Of those exposed to radio ads, over half made it. Despite how often the media reports on newer forms of advertising, it is, in fact, free broadcast radio that most effectively reaches and truly influences customers. Radio allows you to place your company's message directly to the radio audience for 30 or 60 seconds, and it's a gold mine. Radio advertisements are more memorable than total ads. Just this simple. Sound is stored more effectively in this market. Potential customers with your radio message 5803 extension 222 or visit WCRN radio.com
with award honored Gary Kelly and Sue Gordon.
edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. You can join the conversation at 508-817-7000. We're talking about the court's recent decision, specifically the way I don't like to refer to term, and technically that's what happened. But the court is just saying, hey, it's going back to the states. And we have states who have trigger laws that have been in place. So they're going to kick in. And that just simply means they anticipated this could happen. And if this did happen, as it did now happen, that these laws will then go into effect. And they vary from state to state. And that raises a whole series of other questions. And that is, where do you live? Your abortion options are going to be based geographically. And that means you're going to have women who will need to travel over the state. Did you want to say something, Ted? Is it?
Yeah.
Did you ever have an abortion, first of all? You can't even put your headphones on.
Well, one of the questions that is going to be asked is, do you arrest women that get an abortion when you arrest the abortionist? Are they complicit in the crime?
Yeah.
Do they go to jail?
Yeah. What about the doctor who performs it? Are they breaking law? What about in some cases, right? They were talking about going after, if you took a taxi or an Uber, that you can charge the taxi driver, the Uber driver, for participating in that crime. I mean, that's the extent that some of these bills and laws are saying. So this opens up this whole can of worms. And then you got to ask the question, obviously, well, what about the people who live on the margins here? If you're wealthy, like everything else in the world, if you're wealthy, it's not an issue, right? You travel and you get it done, or whatever you need to do.
Joe, there's even interstate commercial code issues that would relate to a woman
crossing
leaving the state line to
commit
get
a crime.
Abortion.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. There's a bunch of stuff that really opens this up, and these trigger laws are being kicked in, and now it becomes, well, where do you live, and what is the law in that state, traveling state. Then you have the question, like I was bringing up, okay, the marginalized people who can't afford to travel, and I mean that usually is going to entail time and money, maybe a hotel room, and someone else there. You can't go. I mean, there's a lot of, you get it, the layers that are there. We don't have to break it all down for you. So it opens a lot of these questions. But the point is, in the premise of this decision is based on the fact that it should be the states. It's not in the Constitution. When we talk about the gun bill, it's a Second Amendment. So yes, they've got the guideline. That's the court's rule.
Joe, what these things have in common is that the court is reaffirming the process of law, reaffirming the rights we all have to due process.
And that's the thing, is that the abortion is not in the Constitution, but neither are a lot of other things, right? Interracial marriage. And now there's talk about that's next. They're going to go after, I mean, Thomas has already said, maybe we should look at contraceptives and same-sex marriage. So, is that then? But again, sometimes the court needs to modernize these decisions and take into account the day and age that we live in. So obviously abortion's not addressed in the Constitution, for crying out loud. Women are barely addressed in the Constitution. At the time of the Constitution written, women couldn't vote. Women couldn't vote till 1919, I think. It's right there in that age. I don't remember if it was 19
change over time has served us well.
I'm sorry, say again?
Piecemeal change over time has served us well. This is the problem with the energy issue. People don't want to wait for the country to catch up.
Right. So they're jamming it down our throats. And that's a whole nother discussion about that, because remember, batteries don't make electricity. They just store it. That electricity came usually from a fossil fuel somewhere. So that's a whole nother discussion, which I've had in other shows and we'll certainly have again. But before we run out of time on today's show, I did also want to bring up the whole issue that we're dealing with like this Jane's revenge, right? They've guaranteed, if this came down like this, they guaranteed a night of rage. The court they put up the fences a week ago around the Supreme Court building down in D.C. Now, they wrote that open letter last week, and they're saying that, it's all on the table. It's open season on pro-life establishments, and we've seen vandalism and the graffiti and the attacks and so forth on those centers. And we had the bill that was slow walked by the speaker for upping the protection for justices. Now, they're also saying, we've got to expand this even more now. This would the clerks and court office I guess the court officers, I don't know, but you'd call the security within the Supreme Court building, the clerks there, the staff, and so forth, also need protection, they're saying, and that didn't make it through the first round. But when you have an organization, and I have to say, again, we have a government who selectively is deciding when to adhere to laws, practice the enforcement of these laws based on their political leanings, and it's not evenly being applied across the board. We saw when these protests are happening outside of certain justices' homes that the president doesn't, not only is silent about condemning it, but him and the speaker said people have a right to express their opinion and free speech and all that. But yes, but again, with limits. We've established that through the Supreme Court, right? You can't yell fire in a courthouse, in a theater, and you cannot intimidate justices. I mean, the law also says justices, judges, and even jurists, if you were selected for a jury and you're sitting in a jury, the 1507 law applies to you as well. That's just jury tampering. Now that the decision has actually come down, the argument can't be made that you're trying to intimidate the decision. The decision's been made and released. So nothing is going to happen. But you got Jane's Revenge out there, as well as other organizations threatening a night of rage, an open season on these people.
Joe, as we speak, Elizabeth Warren is planted in front of the State House and is raging a storm.
Really? Right now?
Right now, I go to Channel 5 and it's live.
You're live. And this is all in response to the RV Wade overturn. And what do you, can you see what she's saying, or what's her position?
Not without disrupting your show.
All right, got it. Well, we'll find out what that says. But look, maybe part of it coming out today was on a Friday was purposeful. And that was to try to give a cushion to the weekend and not have it in the middle of the week and this type of thing. But
Joe,
I think...
Joe, I got to disagree with you. I think it's a mistake to categorize or characterize anything reduced to a political or social issue when it comes to the judiciary. We have to avoid that. That's why we're not supposed to have...
Well, I agree. That's why they're lifetime appointments.
Right.
So they're not supposed to be swayed by any of this.
Right.
But that doesn't stop Jane's Revenge in other organizations.
Well, I was referring to the release date.
Oh, the release date.
I don't think the court thinks like
Oh,
that.
okay. I see what you're saying, that they didn't do it this way. I don't know. They are human. And even though they like to be, I think part of it was, remember that some of these justices have children in school. And I think they wanted to delay the release of this decision to try to get to as close as the out of school season as they could. I mean, that's just an observation and an opinion, and nothing is really done by accident. So releasing it today was purposeful. Why, though? I don't know. I can't read their minds. I don't know what their reasoning was, but when they release it is absolutely purposeful. I mean, they decide when they're going to do these things, and why they did it today. Could it be a coincidence? I don't know. I think the fact that it's Friday does have a play in this. What is going to happen? How are big cities preparing for these protests? Are we going to go back to the summer of 2020, where we had mostly peaceful protests, as dump burning behind the reporter? Are we going to have people hurt? Are we going to have people people seriously hurt in this process. What is going to happen? And what is the law agencies, right? Because we've got the federal, got the AG who is feckless. I mean, I'm so glad this guy didn't make it to the Supreme Court. But Trump promised that he was going to get some pro-life justices and some conservatives on. He got 3 appointments. It did alter the dynamics. And Mark brought up Pelosi's calling them extremists. And I think that the terms that have been used very liberally and without a lot of consideration. They have characterized anybody who is not in their court as extremists in a danger because you clearly don't agree. And that is a very dangerous thing to do. Hey, I wanted to bring something up, and I don't know, Ted, you might like this, but just before, it was a thought I had. There's a show up there. It's a limited series. And if you're a fan of The Godfather at all, you got to see this series. It's called The Offer. And The Offer is, I don't think it's 10 or 12 episodes or something. It's dealing with the making of The Godfather. And I don't know, I'm on 9 or 10 or something, but it is something, if you have a chance to check it out, if you like The Godfather, it's one of the best movies ever made. Some might argue the best movie ever made. But Al Ruddy, who was the producer, he was actually the guy behind Hogan's Heroes. And he left the series, he went to Paramount and kind of finagled the bagel his way in there. And they had optioned on the book, which was, at the time, the highest copy sold book other than the Bible at the time. And that Paramount had the option to make the movie on this. And they actually engaged the author to help write the screenplay. But anyway, if you haven't seen it, check out The Offer. It's a great show, and it's really interesting. Watch The Godfather before you watch The Offer, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in there and stuff. But this is going to wrap up Friday's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Join me Sunday morning at 6 o'clock. Mike Wade at 7, Peter Blute at 9, Jerry Doherty jumps in at 9:30 for a little while. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great one, folks. Joe out.